Hello and welcome to this presentation for low-intensity strategies for student engagement in in-person and remote settings. My name is Mark Buckman, and I, along with my colleagues, are absolutely just thrilled to be presenting at this year's OSEP Leadership and Project Directors Conference. So thank you for having us and thank you for joining us. In this presentation, we'll first introduce ourselves and our research team, and then we'll provide a brief overview of the Comprehensive Integrated Three-Tiered Model of Prevention, or CI3T, which is an integrated tiered system designed to support students across academic, behavioral, and social and emotional well-being domains. Then we're very excited to share with you some materials designed by our team over the course of the year to help educators, families, and students adjust to a very untraditional school year during the COVID-19 pandemic. Specifically, we design materials to help teach how to incorporate low-intensity strategies such as behavior-specific praise, pre-correction, active supervision, and instructional choice into remote instruction, and also how to support family members in using those same strategies to help create a positive and productive learning environment at home. Before we jump into the presentation, we first want to give a huge shout out to our amazing research team. We have faculty members, research staff, graduate students, educators, and school leaders on our team from across the country who have been working tirelessly to support schools, students, and families. This slide includes the faces of many of the people who have contributed to the work we'll share with you today, and we're so grateful to them all and to have such an incredible team. As I mentioned, my name is Mark Buckman. I am a research project director at the University of Kansas and a recently concluded KU Wright Scholar. KU Wright is an OSEP-funded project, which we'll share just a little bit more about in a moment. My colleagues who worked with me on this presentation include Dr. Kathleen Lane, Paloma Perez-Clark, who you'll also hear from a bit later, as well as Katie Austin. Paloma and Katie are current KU Wright scholars who are doing incredible work with schools as part of several ongoing research projects, and were incredible collaborators in creating many of the resources you'll see today. As we mentioned, KU Wright is an OSEP-funded project housed at the University of Kansas. KU Wright focuses on training researchers in intensive interventions, tiered systems, and evidence-based practices. Paloma, Katie, and myself, and our good friend and colleague Grant Allen, are either current or concluding KU Wright scholars, and it's been a truly rigorous and inspiring opportunity to work with Kathleen and other co-PIs, including Jason Travers and Melinda Lico. So, jumping right in, we'll give a brief overview of the Comprehensive Integrated Three-Tiered Model of Prevention, or CI3T. CI3T is a tiered framework intended to support students' multiple academic, behavioral, and social and emotional competencies. Knowing that school success is dependent not just on academic learning, but also on behavioral and social skills, CI3T provides a structure to provide explicit instruction across three domains: academic, behavior, and social, which is done using an integrated approach. This means that school staff learn how to weave instruction on school-wide expectations and social and emotional competencies like self-regulation into daily instruction. Further, educators learn to seamlessly employ low-intensity strategies like behavior-specific praise, pre-correction, and active supervision into their instruction to support student engagement. All of this is done at Tier 1, meaning that access to this instruction is provided to all students. Data-informed decision-making, using multiple data sources including academic and behavior screening, treatment integrity, and social validity, is used to determine when students may benefit from Tier 2 or Tier 3 supports, which consist of validated interventions matched to student need. Professional learning is at the heart of CI3T. Even before beginning to implement, school leaders comprising a CI3T leadership team complete a manualized professional development learning series, during which they develop and acquire the knowledge, skills, and resources needed to lead implementation. They also use data gathered from multiple stakeholders to create a CI3T implementation manual, which is finalized only after getting multiple rounds of feedback. If you're interested in learning more about this process, you can access ci3t.org/building, where you'll find links and tons of resources. After the initial building year, schools continue to work through professional learning to ensure CI3T leaders have support necessary to collect and use data, make action plans to enhance and sustain implementation, and create data-informed professional learning plans designed to build the skills of faculty and staff. The graphic shown here represents a typical year of professional learning for CI3T leadership teams. It consists of 5 sessions taking place throughout the year, centered around preparing to collect data, such as systematic screening, treatment integrity, and social validity data, as well as working with those data once collected to action plan and make decisions. However, by mid-March of 2020, it became clear that different types of professional learning resources would be necessary to help schools meet the challenge of providing instruction in remote settings, often with extremely limited time to make plans for this unprecedented shift. So, we began to create resources for educators, families, and administrators, with the aim of creating free-to-access materials that addressed needs shared with us by our school partners. For example, finding ways to motivate and engage students during remote learning was a huge need, as was supporting parents in helping their children be successful at home. These are the resources we'll be sharing today, which are all available at ci3t.org/COVID. We're so inspired by the appetite shown for using these resources. For example, between April of 2020 and April of 2021, we had over 22,000 page views of ci3t.org/COVID, with visitors from 33 countries. Some of the most accessed resources include tips for educators in getting set up to teach from home, as well as resources for families as they set up environments to help their children learn from home. All of these resources are still freely available on ci3t.org/COVID, so if anything on this list piques your interest, feel free to pause the presentation and visit the website. In addition to creating free access resources on specific topics, such as infographics, videos, and step-by-step checklists, we also created CI3T implementation exemplars to assist school leaders in conceptualizing how to use their CI3T structure to adapt procedures for remote learning environments. CI3T implementation manuals serve as the guiding document for implementing schools. It includes information and resources for communicating roles and responsibilities for a variety of stakeholders, including students, faculty and staff, families, and administrators. With the transition to remote learning, clearly communicating what expectations were, not just for students, but also for educators, families, and administrators, was a key component to building consistency and predictability. For example, faculty and staff roles and responsibilities during a normal year include things like what core programs are taught and with what dosage, and to use proactive, research-based strategies to support student engagement. By clearly laying out these expectations in the CI3T implementation manual, school leaders help make transparent the expectations so educators can plan and access support to meet those expectations. With the shift to remote learning, making it clear and explicit that those same strategies could and should be applied to virtual instruction served as a helpful reminder to educators to call on the skills and practices they had used in brick-and-mortar settings. However, it was also apparent that people needed support in understanding how those strategies could be transported to the virtual setting. And that's where our research team put our initial efforts during the first days of the pandemic. Now, we're going to share with you resources built by our team to help educators and families use low-intensity strategies to support students in a variety of settings, including during remote learning. When we talk about low-intensity strategies, we are referring to the 7 practices listed in the blue boxes represented here, which are opportunities to respond, behavior-specific praise, active supervision, instructional feedback, high P requests or high probability requests, pre-correction, and instructional choice. These are practices with a robust evidence base to suggest they will be effective for students in increasing engagement and reducing the likelihood of disruptive behavior. Furthermore, these practices are proactive and easy to use, making them ideal components of Tier 1 instruction. Many wonderful resources exist to learn about these low-intensity strategies, such as the book Supporting Behavior for School Success by Kathleen Lane, Holly Menzies, Robin Ennis, and Wendy Oakes. However, our team is also committed to free access resources. Therefore, over a period of several years, many free access resources were developed to help educators learn and use low-intensity strategies in in-person school settings. These can be accessed on the Professional Learning tab of ci3t.org. For years, these professional learning materials have been fundamental to the professional learning provided by CI3T leadership teams at the school and district level to train and support staff in using these practices. In just a few minutes, Paloma is going to share some examples of what these resources look like. As mentioned, though, it was important to ensure we also provided support to educators during this difficult time as they were working to provide engaging instruction to students in an unfamiliar context. So we also created implementation checklists, infographics, and videos illustrating how these practices could be applied in virtual settings. As mentioned, these are available on ci3t.org/COVID. We also made parallel resources for families so educators could share ideas that could be used in the home. These resources are available in English and in Spanish. And now I'm going to turn it over to Paloma Perez Clark, who will take you on a tour of some of the available resources.
Hello, my name is Paloma Perez Clark, and I'm excited to show you the resources we have developed to help educators and families use low-intensity strategies to support children and youth's engagement, both in person and in remote learning environments. The first set of resources we featured today are for implementing behavior-specific praise. Behavior-specific praise is a specific acknowledgement or praise statement to recognize a behavior. The key components of behavior-specific praise are praising statements linked to behavior, giving feedback specific to that behavior, being sincere, reflecting on skill level, evaluating effectiveness, and praising effort instead of ability. These first set of materials are to support in-person learning. You can find a PowerPoint presentation containing an overview of this strategy as well as implementation and planning forms for educators. Treatment integrity and social validity checklists are also offered to determine the extent to which the strategy was used as intended and how those involved feel about using the intervention. As Mark shared earlier, we have recently developed materials to support engagement during remote learning environments. Step-by-step guides are available to give an overview, implementation steps, and quick tips for success, as well as links to other resources. The infographics list the steps to implement behavior-specific praise and can be used as a quick guide with links to videos embedded. Now we will take a quick look at the video for implementing behavior-specific praise in a virtual learning environment. Behavior-specific praise in the virtual learning environment. Behavior-specific praise refers to positive statements that name the exact behavior being acknowledged, contingent upon the desired behavior occurring. It is spoken or written acknowledgement used to let a student know when their behavior has met expectations. Behavior-specific praise continues to be integral to reinforcing student behavior given new expectations for the virtual learning environment. Use behavior-specific praise after a student engages in an expected behavior. Verbally state or type in a message stating the expected behavior. For example, Johnny, thank you for logging into class on time. By naming the specific behavior, you provide clarity to the student about the behaviors that will help them be successful in the virtual classroom. In this example, Johnny may be more likely to log in the virtual classroom on time in the future because he knows the expectation and it was positively noticed and acknowledged by his teacher. We have also developed resources for families to support engagement at home. The step-by-step checklist to implement this strategy at home can be used as a guide with examples of how to implement behavior-specific praise with elementary-aged children and youth. These resources for families are available both in English and Spanish. Infographics for families can also serve as a quick reference to implement the steps, and the short video is also another easy way families can learn about behavior-specific praise and how it may be helpful to use at home. Having these materials can support generalization of skills across school and home environments as both educators and families work together to support learning and engagement for children and youth. Each of the checklists for both educators and families contain examples to illustrate how to use the strategy. In one example for an elementary-aged student, Mr. Carroll, Maggie's teacher, realized he was mostly using general praise and that he often directed his attention to Maggie when she was not meeting expectations. After going through the implementation steps, Mr. Carroll observed Maggie would probably enjoy private praise, so he used a private chat feature to acknowledge her engagement in addition to public acknowledgments, such as, "I see Maggie giving me a thumbs up, letting me know she's ready for practice." In a similar fashion, we have examples to implement behavior-specific praise at home so families can use real-life illustrations with younger children and adolescents for ideas on how to use the strategy. Now I would like to share materials to implement a second low-intensity strategy, pre-correction. These first set of materials are to support in-person learning. The PowerPoint presentation containing an overview of this strategy can be found in the Professional Learning tab of our website, as well as implementation and planning forms for educators. In addition, the treatment integrity and social validity checklists are also offered to measure how well the strategy was used as intended and what people think about using the intervention. The PowerPoint presentations found on our website provide an overview of each strategy, as well as a rationale for why it is effective and a step-by-step process for implementation. Here, you can see a sample from the pre-correction presentation with an explanation of what it is and why it is effective. Specifically, when using pre-correction, we seek to first anticipate activities when inappropriate behaviors may occur. By getting in front of problems, we may offer students gentle reminders of the expectations, for example, in the hallways or before dismissal for lunch. Conversely, if we manage behavior only with consequences, it would require waiting until the behavior occurs to respond and offer feedback. Training materials like these can be used to provide professional learning by CA3T leadership team members to faculty and staff to build skills and confidence in using pre-correction and other low-intensity strategies. Next, our recently developed materials to support engagement during remote learning environments are shown. The overview of pre-correction with implementation steps, quick tips for success, and links to other resources are contained in the step-by-step checklist. The infographic also lists steps to use pre-correction virtually, with links to an introductory and updated video for virtual learning environments. These videos can be accessed through our website. Here, we show materials for families to use pre-correction at home. First, we show the step-by-step checklist to implement the strategy using examples of how to implement pre-correction with children and youth. These checklists and infographics for families are available in English and Spanish. Each of the checklists for both educators and families contain examples to illustrate how to use the strategy. In one example for using pre-correction virtually, Nathan was having trouble staying focused during math as he was watching other things on the screen while the teacher, Mr. Common, gave instructions. After following the implementation steps, Mr. Common met with Nathan in a breakout room to talk about the use of pre-correction to support his engagement. Mr. Common let Nathan know he would remind the class to avoid distractions, and they both practiced how Nathan would avoid looking at other screens during instructions, giving Nathan the opportunity to have a plan for instructional times. Next, these are materials to implement a third low-intensity strategy, active supervision. As with previous strategies, these materials are available to facilitate in-person learning at school. A PowerPoint presentation containing an overview of active supervision, implementation, and planning forms, as well as treatment integrity and social validity checklists are offered. On this next slide, we show our recently developed materials for using active supervision during remote learning environments. As with other strategies shown previously, a step-by-step checklist, an infographic, and videos are available for virtual educators. Now we will take a closer look at our infographic outlining the steps to implement active supervision. As shown, the infographic has links to an introductory video of active supervision, and one video specific to implementing the strategy in virtual environments. The first step to implementing active supervision is to examine data to identify a time when active supervision would be most beneficial. Second, it is important to ensure the routines for that specific time identified are understood by students, and if not, those must be established first. To implement the strategy, the educator would initially provide a cue or prompt to start the activity. Once it starts, the educator can begin to implement active supervision by scanning and monitoring the video feed for signs of engagement. The educator must then signal their awareness of students' actions through acknowledgement, chat messages, and prompts as needed. Educators then manage off-task behaviors efficiently, privately, and discreetly, and reinforce desired behaviors with praise, gestures, and reactions. Finally, the opportunity for students to give feedback is presented with a poll or other features as an example. We have developed the accompanying set of materials for home. Next, we will briefly look at a step-by-step video to implement active supervision at home.
Active supervision is an effective strategy to support children in engaging in expected or desired behavior. To use active supervision, the adult or caregiver frequently monitors children in specific settings or during activities before problems occur. Active supervision keeps children safe, minimizes behavior problems, and promotes the learning and use of desired behaviors. Active supervision involves a few key steps, including setting expectations, frequently looking around or scanning, positive interactions such as verbal and nonverbal pre-corrections and reminders, reinforcement of desired behavior, and when necessary, correction to help children learn the expected behavior. Here's how you can use active supervision in your home. Identify the setting or activity that would benefit the most from active supervision. Ensure that your child understands the routines and expectations for the setting or activity. If not, establish routines and expectations. Remind your child to get started with the next part of their day, or begin an activity. As the activity unfolds, look around and monitor your child's behavior. Use proximity, like physical closeness, verbal cues, and other nonverbal communication, like smiling or winking, to let your child know that you're paying attention to what they are doing. If a problem comes up, talk with your child privately in a non-emotional way, and give opportunities for positive interactions between you and your child. At different times throughout the activity, and at the end of the activity, praise your child's desirable behavior with positive comments and gestures. Provide your child with an opportunity to give feedback. For additional resources to support educators and families, please visit our website, ci3t.org/COVID.
In this next slide, we show, as with previous strategies presented earlier, the examples for how to use active supervision in virtual and home settings, including illustrations for elementary and secondary aged children and youth. These examples may help both educators and families connect to specific times and activities when active supervision may be a proactive way to support behavior at school, virtually and in person, as well as home. Finally, we introduce choice as a low-intensity strategy, and in this slide, we show materials to support in-person learning. For school, instructional choice refers to the opportunities a student has to make choices from two or more options, and they are allowed to independently choose one. The set of in-person materials, as all others shown previously, can be accessed in the Professional Learning tab of our website. Next, our more recently developed materials to support engagement in virtual learning environments are shown. These sets of in-person and virtual learning materials complement each other to support not only the implementation of these low-intensity strategies by virtual and in-person educators and parents, but also to increase the chances that children and youth will be able to benefit from behavior support across different environments and people. As shown with each of the strategies we share, materials for families to implement choices are also available to share. For example, Usando la elección en casa is the Spanish version for home use. Educators may choose to share these materials with families, not only electronically via emails and newsletters, but also in print to ensure everyone has access from home, even without a device. In the examples for educators and families, we highlight scenarios when choice may be a good strategy to support engagement. In the virtual learning example for elementary age students, Mrs. Payton provided her students with the choice to respond with typed responses in a Word document, a voice recording, or a handwritten response sending a picture. Finally, we would like to highlight and honor those researchers who have studied the effectiveness of these strategies to support student engagement and learning. Mallory Messenger, Emily Cantwell, Eric Common, David Royer, Robin Ennis, Holly Menzies, Wendy Oakes, and Kathleen Lane have inquired about the effectiveness of low-intensity strategies and disseminated their knowledge on lessons learned over the years. On this slide, we present two studies that examined instructional choice and opportunities to respond, which used some of the materials presented here to support study procedures. If you would like to access these studies, we have included the DOIs as links on this slide. We are thankful to be a part of such a committed and productive research team who focuses on supporting educators to help students succeed both at school and life. We hope the materials developed from the lessons previously learned are helpful to educators and families as we support students in diverse and ever-changing environments for learning.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paloma, for sharing those resources. We want to close with an idea we've been working on with educators for the past few years that's very much related to the strategies that are shared in this presentation. The idea is called integrated lesson planning, which involves providing teachers with a structure in which to plan lessons that seamlessly weave together lesson objectives across academic, behavioral, and social domains, as well as embedding low-intensity strategies throughout the lesson in an integrated fashion to help ensure that instruction is engaging, varied, and relevant for all students. We look forward to sharing more about integrated lesson planning in the future, but if you're interested in accessing a templated integrated lesson planning format, this can be found under the Resources for Educators accordion on ci3t.org/COVID. Lastly, to close out, we just want to encourage you all to check out resources available for teaching educators how to use low-intensity strategies in in-person settings, which can be found on ci3t.org/pl, as well as resources available on ci3t.org/COVID to support educators and families in using the approaches presented here to help students learn at school and at home. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's truly an honor to be here as KU Wright Scholars and to share what we've been working on thanks to the support of OSEP and truly amazing PIs and mentors like Kathleen and many others. So thank you all, and we wish you a relaxing and safe summer. Thank you so much.